How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It only took us like three and a half days, but here we are, our very first official team announcement, and it comes in from the LA Guerrillas. Their 2022 to 2023 roster is in fact HUKE, SPART, NEPTUNE, and Arcitys. Yes, they were able to win the Arcitys sweepstakes after what had been a very long conversation that we've had here on the channel discussing, is Arcitys a free agent? Is he leaving the Atlanta phase? Has that roster finally broken up? And really, where is he headed? And we talked at length about, the different locations that he could be headed. We talked about it could be the subliners who win Arcitys. It could be Minnesota. It could be Seattle even. But it turns out he has landed in Guerrilla territory. Now, it's a different type of feel is the way that I would describe it. It's a different type of feel to what we expected and to what I'm imagining that maybe even Arcitys was expecting coming into his free agency period. Now, when we talk about the Guerrillas specifically, they had to work very hard, I would imagine, in order to get Arcitys onto their roster. He was going to be a restricted free agent, which means that a buyout probably had to be paid. There is this current situation. It's still rumored as of this moment that Slasher could be headed to Atlanta. Arcitys, of course, now he is here on the Guerrillas, so maybe there was a trade. It could have been two separate transactions. That, to my guess, is how this is working based off of a few tweets coming in from the Guerrillas. But essentially, without getting into all the nitty-gritty details of it, LAG just went all in to get this guy. All right, this is their focus. This is going to be their future for as long as I imagine that they can keep him on the team, and for good reason, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who don't recognize the value that somebody like Arcitys has. Like, I saw a lot of people talking about, the valuable or the value of certain free agents out there. Arcitys is up there, but he's not probably the biggest free agent. And I just want to point that out. This guy is a two-time world champion. He has been in 3 of the last 4 COD Champs Grand Finals. He's been a part of the Atlanta phase for the last few seasons. He also was the piece that Atlanta phase looked at to try and complete their team. Job well done when we talk about Cold War specifically. And if you were to stop and look back at the last 3 years, I challenge you to do this. If you go back and look at the last 3 years from this moment, you would see how incredibly impressive it is that Arcitys has made the run that he has, how successful that he has been. So if you look at the last 3 years, which technically, if you put that blanket out, it would cover the end of Black Ops 4 up until the end of the Vanguard season, so stretching over technically what would be 4 titles during this 3-year time frame, there have been a total of 14 tournaments that we would define as majors, not including MW, because when we talk about those home series, only 8 teams are really involved. But what is widely regarded as majors, so the ones over the past few seasons, COD Champs tournaments, really where every single team is involved. If you look at those, there have been 14 tournaments in these past 3 years. Arcitys has been in the grand finals of 11 of those 14. And on top of it all, he is only placed outside of the top 3 in 3 years, one time. Just one time, right? In the level of competition that we've seen since the CDL has formed, even at the end of Black Ops 4, the amount of talent, the fact that he has been in that many grand finals, 11 out of those 14, been in 13 out of the 14 tournaments, at least in the top 3, is widely impressive. And you could say, well, what's the one tournament that he didn't finish in the top 3? Finished top 7, top 8 at the Cold War Stage 5 major, where they lost versus Seattle Surge in like round 1 or round 2. There was no surprise, considering what you just heard, that he now has overtaken Crim6 as the highest earning Call of Duty Esports pro player of all time. And you could say, well, hey, he was playing on Atlanta phase after all. He was with Simp, he was with Abizi, he was with Celium, and I would say, yes, he was. And that is going to be a positive if you are any team out there, because not only has he been winning, but he knows what it takes to win. He has played alongside of winners. He has been in 3 out of the last 4 COD Champs Grand Finals. If you're the Guerrillas, you just want a taste of what that is like. You want a taste of what has been going on with the most successful players and most successful teams over really the last 4 titles, last 3 years, is like we said, what we're talking about when it comes to Arcitys. So this is going to go under the radar for a lot of people, because you're going to look at the other 3 players and say, okay, not the greatest season, right, in terms of last year. And I totally agree with that. Okay, you're going to bring in Arcitys. Well, he technically was the worst player for Atlanta FaZe if you look at statistics. But this is not, in my eyes, what LAG is aiming out for. I don't think that they look at this upcoming season, or really just the start of this year more specifically, as a team that they expect to be winning every single thing. I think that they're looking for more of a foundation, something to build upon by adding Arcitys to this roster. Like I said, they are getting somebody who knows how to win, somebody who has been winning, and what it takes to get there. I've been giving a lot of props. I feel like this is a good move from the Guerrillas. But the other three players, I would have preferred to have seen a veteran voiced SMG. Maybe you would have kept the seam on the roster. I feel like HUKE has not been talked about in a lot of moves that have been made during this offseason. I feel like he's been very quiet when we talk about rumors, at least. So I think he's gone under the radar. I think Asim is one of the better players that we have in the CDL, despite not having the greatest year for LAG statistically. So I would have liked to have seen Arcitys join alongside of this team with at least a veteran voiced SMG player. I would have loved, not only would we have had could have had a, veteran voiced SMG, I would have loved to have another superstar. I mean, I talked at length about how, hey, LAG, if they can maybe get somebody like Arcitys, maybe it's a package, right? Maybe you bring in Arcitys and attach together. Maybe you bring in Cammy. Maybe you, I don't know. The list goes on and on. Maybe you bring in Arcitys alongside of another star piece to build on maybe two players that you really liked from last year's roster. And what I believe ended up happening with the Guerrillas, the reason why we see 3 out of these 4 players stay on the roster and you basically just bring Arcitys for Slasher, is that we did hear a lot of rumors about HUKE, SPART, and NEPTUNE that could be going over to the Florida Mutineers. What I imagine took place was that all 3 of these guys want to play together, and they basically said, hey, LAG, we're interested. We could maybe go to a different team, but we all really want to be together. So either you let us go to Florida or we play for you. And LAG said, okay, we're getting Arcitys onto the team, or at least we're trying to get Arcitys on the team, depending on when this took place. Let's not try and just wipe away the whole roster and end up putting ourselves in a more difficult spot because of where players could be headed, how expensive it could be. You're already paying a lot for somebody like Arcitys, I would imagine, to get brought onto this roster. So how about we at least just see how this goes? And I think that is, like I said from earlier, I think that is what LAG is focusing on right now. Focus on what you have, see how solid it is at the start of MW2. How long do you take? Whatever. Maybe you give the roster a few months. Maybe you give them 1-2 months into the season, see how they play, and then you start to make moves from there. And, and when you do look at these 3 guys, HUKE did have some great moments throughout the season. I mean, we obviously know peak HUKE, the guy who came onto the stage at the Major 2 in Minnesota and just had the scariest look on his face, came out and absolutely fried. So we know the talent obviously exists when it comes down to HUKE. NEPTUNE, difficult season, started things under NYSL, eventually managed to make his way over to the Guerrillas after playing in Challengers. Really, during his time in Challengers, he looked great, was looking phenomenal in Search Destroy. I think it was going to be a difficult return, no matter how you looked at it, especially with how this Guerrilla team was starting to plummet. We also know that he was dealing with some injuries throughout the year that recently came to light, so that very well could have affected his level of play. Was the issues with NYSL, the hand injuries on top of it, and then coming to a Guerrilla situation to where it did not seem the most favorable to start with. So you could have NEPTUNE picking up maybe from where he left off in Cold War, and if that's the case, that is a very hot prospect that, of course, NYSL was willing to invest in last year. Then you have SPART, who was the Major 2 MVP, then got dropped. That was a very criticized move by a lot of people out there talking about LAG. This was not the right player to release. Then he gets brought back to the team. And really throughout his time in Challengers, throughout what I've heard, at least some veteran players talk about who have had the chance to play alongside of him, they feel like he has a bright future, a very bright future in the CDL, a very smart guy, knows what he's doing on the map, incredibly well-versed, somebody who is a grinder. And it honestly feels very similar to the other LA franchise with the player who was brought in and taken out of the lineup, like the OGLA/LAT run with Draza. And so I think that it could be a similar situation to LAG. And how does Draza compare to somebody like SPART? Obviously, it's up to you. But I believe that there is some promise on this Guerrilla team. I think you do like a lot of things about HUKE. I think if NEPTUNE can return to form, which is a big if, that is something that you're very interested in. But I think more than any other thing out there, I was very eager, and I am very eager to see how SPART, now playing along somebody like Arcitys, how he can develop. I think at least when we talk about the ARs, LAG could have a very good core moving into next season. Now, in closing, you know, do I think that this is going to be a roster that lasts to the end of the year? I don't. I really don't. I don't believe that this is going to be a roster that manages to make it all the way to the end of the season, just early expectations. But if you are LAG, if you're a fan of the Guerrillas, I don't think that you're worried about that. I really don't, because I think that this is going to be a good period. There are so many people who are so eager to say, listen, if we don't come out and win the very first tournament, we're failing. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. And I get it, right? You just brought in the hottest free agent that was available, and you very well are saying that this may not be the roster that we have moving into the rest of the year. It may not even be our team come like middle of the season. But like I said, if you are a Guerrillas fan, I think that you are happy with the move that you made, because when it comes down to making future moves, if this roster does, and I believe that they will, this is going to be a very interesting roster to want to join alongside of. Because if they were willing to invest in somebody like Arcitys, it is very clear that they could be willing to invest in another star piece. Let's say that at least one of these players, if not two of them, work out for LAG, then you're looking for one more guy, and you already have a team that's working together. You already have what I believe will be a top player in the next title in Arcitys on this team, maybe a developing challenger talent and somebody like SPART, and then maybe you're choosing between two of the SMGs. So like I said, this is a long-term move by the Guerrillas. So as much as I would love to grade it, and I would honestly grade it not super high given the current 4-man lineup, but I will say this is probably a move that we're going to revisit, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 months time, maybe even at the end of the title, and say that's what LAG was trying to do. That's what they were trying to build, was giving Arcitys the keys, let him make the decisions, recognize that, hey, this is not the team that we want to have for you, you know, long term. This is where we're starting out with. So I have no problem with LAG starting over, technically starting fresh, even though it is 3 out of the 4 players, but you get my point. Allowing for somebody like Arcitys to step into this role and start to make decisions. I don't have an issue with that. But like I said, it's not exactly a guaranteed experiment that is going to work. We've seen many franchises previously invest in top veteran talent, top players, and it has not panned out for them. So that is something to keep in mind as well. It will be an experiment over these next few months for LAG, and they're going to have to make sure that they tweak and do things exactly right. But let me know down in the comments what your guys' thoughts are on this roster. I would like to talk more in depth about the team, but I really just wanted to talk about what actually is going to be the inner workings of the Guerrilla franchise. Let me know down in the comments your guys' thoughts on this roster, what you think about LAG moving forward into Modern Warfare, how you think Arcitys could mix with the team, and really I'd love to, like I said, continue this conversation down in the comments below. I've been looking at all the comments. You guys have been very involved on talking about these roster moves, which I always greatly appreciate. Make sure to like if you have not done so already, and subscribe to the channel for more off-season roster mania content. I promise more is coming, and a lot of interesting and exciting news coming to the channel very soon as well. I will leave you with that, and I'll see you guys very soon back here on the channel.